Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, Wes Richardson Unfiltered, and welcome back to Chapter 2 of Finding Ellis. So this series is about 4 Bolynn brothers that went off to World War II. 2 of them were in the Navy and they came home, but there's 2 more that served in the Army and they did not make it home. That is William Ellis Bolynn and who we're talking about today, Duvall Bolynn. Now, with Ellis, the reason we're calling this series Finding Ellis is because he was killed in World War II by machine gun fire, but his body was never identified as Ellis and brought home. So myself, my mom, my cousin, my Uncle Mike, we've all submitted DNA samples in hopes to matching an unidentified body with Ellis and bringing him home. Also, something I forgot to mention in Chapter 1, Ellis's name is written on a memorial wall in Belgium. So hopefully this year I'll be able to visit Belgium and take some video of the memorial. Again, that'll be another chapter. Before we dive into Dewey, I wanted to give you just a quick update with the DNA samples. So again, I've submitted my DNA, my mom has submitted her DNA, my cousin Christy has submitted her DNA, and my Uncle Mike's DNA kit is in the mail on the way to him. So after my Uncle Mike submits his sample, that is enough. It gets moved up to the lab. So that's where we're at with that. Next month on February 21st in Charleston, South Carolina, or North Charleston, they are having a conference there with all the caseworkers to talk about some of the stories of finding DNA, matching it with soldiers and bringing them home. So myself, my mama, and my stepdad, we're taking a road trip. And also Charleston is only about an hour from the Georgetown Cemetery where the mom and dad of the Bolynn family is buried. So Chapter 3 might be the visit to Charleston and the visit to the cemetery of Georgetown. The other brother, Dewey, Duvall Bolynn, that's who we're going to be talking about today. Dewey was killed in an airplane crash in World War II and his body is buried in the Philippines. So this series, Finding Ellis, is a way of us honoring the service of Ellis and Dewey. But again, today we'll be talking about Dewey. And his full name is Duvall Bolynn. From here on, I'm going to be calling him Dewey to make things simple. We talked about the confusion of names in Chapter 1. So when I say Dewey, I'm talking about Duvall Bolynn. And before we go any further, I just want to say thank you to everyone that has watched the video and reached out and helped me with some of the research. I actually sent Chapter 1 to the caseworker that's working with her team to find Ellis, and I got an email from her just saying thank you so much. You know, a lot of times their role becomes kind of stagnant. It becomes kind of discouraging not getting responses, not getting these DNA samples, but it was a very encouraging message. So it's good to know that, again, we're doing this to honor Ellis. We're doing this to honor Dewey and to remember them. Even if we can't bring Ellis home, we'll still have this here to honor their sacrifice for our country. So before we dive into Dewey, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're going to be discussing. Number 1, we're going to talk a little bit about his life before he joined the military. And then we'll talk a little bit about his wife and child. Yes, he had a wife and a kid. And then another thing, what kind of kicked this whole thing off, Thanksgiving in 2025, I went to see my mom and she gave me a letter written by Dewey to my great-grandmother, Bessie Raspberry. So we're going to break down the letter a little bit. I'm going to read it, show it to you. And then we're going to talk a little bit about why Dewey was in the Philippines. What was Dewey's unit doing in the Philippines? And then at the end, there's a little bit of a surprise. Actually, there's 2. And when I learned about these 2 things, it made my heart drop to my stomach. So just bear with me, wait for the end as I try to get this organized and tell the story. If you've got any other information that could help with this, and remember Dewey and Ellis or just the Bolynn family in general, you can send that to richardsonunfiltered@gmail.com. So here we go. Finding Ellis, Chapter 2, about Dewey. All right, so let's get started just talking a little bit about Dewey's life before the military. So here is his certificate of birth, his birth certificate, and you can see it here, Duvall Bolynn. And kind of like we talked about in Chapter 1, back in the day, it was common for people to go by their middle name or a family nickname. So Duvall Bolynn went by Duvall, and I guess eventually that turned into Dewey. So that was his name, Dewey. You can see here William David Bolynn, that was his dad, and then Hattie Cribb, that was his mama. So yeah, birth certificate. Is there a date on there? I think I got the date on the next one. I believe November. I think he was a Scorpio. I think they're known to have tempers. Here's a census. Yeah, I got his date down here somewhere, or his birthday. Yeah. All right, so 11/8/1916. All right, so here's the census from 1940. I'm not going to dive heavy into this. In chapter 1, I dove heavy into 3 or 4 of them. But something I wanted to show I thought was interesting. What I've done over here, you can see the Bolynn name, and then over here there's more information. What I did is I clipped the left side, clipped the right side, and put them together so you could see it better. And so there's the Bolynn name. And on the, okay, so this census was from 1940. So on the other census that we looked at in chapter 1, you will see the dad. I call him Big Daddy because he just, I should say that. But anyway, he's when I say that just means he's the dad of the 10 Bolynn kids, okay? And on all of these censuses here, let me get it together. On all these censuses, he was always listed first, and then Hattie was listed right underneath his wife. Well, in 1940, he was dead. He was dead. So he died in 1932. So on all the censuses before this, you'll see his name listed, and they have him listed as head of household or just head. Well, now you can see he's dead, and Hattie's name is now listed first. Hattie Bolynn, you'll see over to the right, she is listed as head of household. And if you look underneath, there's Dewey. There's Dewey, and there's his little brother, Ellis. That's who we talked about in chapter 1. So there's Dewey. Now check it out over to the right. Again, we talked about this in chapter 1 a little bit. This column right here is for highest grade of education. So Hattie completed the 4th grade, and Dewey and Ellis both completed the 6th grade. AT, that was a Navy guy. I don't know what H1 means. I'd have to look at their ages. He might have been just a baby then. I don't know. But anyway, highest grade completed was 6. Again, you'll see the Doffer. I think it's Doffer. If I don't get this right, my mom is going to kill me. She keeps telling me this stuff, and I just can't get it right. Anyway, this is a position at a cotton mill, and there it is, cotton mill. So this is either Luray Mill or it's Firestone Mill. It's listed on their the military enlistment cards. But check this out, and something I overlooked in chapter 1. You see this column over here? If you look close, for Dewey and Ellis, it says 832. 832. This column here is for your annual hourly, your annual income. So in 1940, Dewey and Ellis, they made $832. $832. Okay, so I translated that into, all right, how much would $832 be in 2026? That's between $20,000 and $25,000 a year. So that would be like if you're working, I don't know, maybe like a Walmart greeter or something like that. You're not getting the full 40 hours, no overtime. That's about the salary. So yeah, $832. And I also put this note right here. It says Harriet. I put this here because y'all noticed in chapter 1, I kept mixing up the mom's name with Hattie and Haiti. Okay, the mom's name is Hattie. My mama, Beverly Summit Washburn, has told me how to pronounce this lady's name 20 times, and I just can't get it right. It's not a lady. It's my great-great-great-grandmother. So I put a note here just so I will get it right. Her name is Hattie. Hattie, like a hat. That's what I'm telling myself in my brain. I also heard a rumor that Hattie was a Bible name. It's like a biblical name, but I did not find a Hattie in the Bible. I could be wrong, but if you find one, let me know. But I did see that most people with the name Hattie, that name originated from the name Harriet. Harriet. So people were called Harriet, and then it just kind of was like a nickname thing that turned into a Hattie. But the origin of the name Hattie was Harriet. So there you go. All right, so here is Dewey. here's a photo. Here's a photo of Dewey. It says Dewey with his wife, Annie Mae Spencer Bolynn May. We're about to read his letter here in just a second. And in the letter, he writes, I hate to leave May and the baby. And when I first read the letter, I did not know who May was. All I had was the letter. And then I went back to my mom. My mom gave me the letter. I went back to my mom to see my mom like 2 weeks later. And she gave me some photos. This is one of the photos that she gave me, and I read the back. And it says Uncle Dewey with Aunt Annie Mae. So that was his wife, Annie Mae. I think it was Annie Mae Spencer, maybe. It could be wrong. If you notice here, Carolyn Summit, that is my Mimi. So my mama is Beverly Summit, Washburn, and then her mom is Carolyn Raspberry Summit. That's my Mimi. And then her mom was Bessie Bolynn Raspberry. That's my great grandmother. So Dewey and Ellis and Bessie, my great grandmother, they were brother and sister. So that's how I'm related. But yeah, this is my Mimi. This is her photo. Mom, I wanted to say thank you for giving me all this stuff, by the way, and sharing this with me. I would not have started this if it wasn't for you, but I really appreciate you sharing stuff and getting to see stuff like Mimi's handwriting and stuff like that. It's just really means a lot to me. So thank you, Mama. I love you. So yeah, there's a picture. And what I did, I used AI to kind of clean it up a little bit. I don't like doing that a lot because sometimes it puts smiles on faces that people weren't really smiling and this and that. If you look close, it threw in a dimple. That could have been just a crease in the paper up here, but it don't really look like he's smiling, does it? But down here, oh man. So anyway, there he is. That's Dewey, handsome fella. All right, and then we'll show you his draft card. Duvall Bolynn, World War II draft card. So on here you can see Duvall Bolynn. There's that 903 Brunette Street. My Uncle Mike, he went to Burnett Street the other day and sent me some photos. It has been flattened. It's like Burnett Street stops. There's some mill houses there. I think there's like 902 or 901 right there. And then it stops. There's a fence. And then there's like a U-Haul facility or something like that. So I'll do a tour of Gastonia Shade. But thank you, Uncle Mike, for showing me that. No wonder I couldn't find it. But yeah, here's the draft card. And check it out. Employer's name, Firestone Cotton Mill. And then there is Dewey's signature. Louis Duvall Bolynn. Now, if you'll notice on here, this came from, where'd I get this? I think I got this from Ancestry.com. If you go to any of the family members, if you can find them and link them, it'll say, hey, or, is this a legitimate document? And I found it, and I was like, yeah, it sure is. And it's got written here in red, this is the government that wrote this in. It says deceased. I don't know what that says. Deceased, that says dead. Maybe it's got a, it looks like somebody tried to dot an I, but if you look over here to the right, it says non-battle. Non-battle. So we did die in an airplane crash. You'll have to wait to the end to figure out what I found out about that, but this is debatable, if not completely wrong. So anyway, there's this draft card. And so this is a picture, again, my mama gave me, and I guess my Mimi gave my mama. And this is Dewey before he left for the service. There's his wife, Annie Mae, and then there's his baby. There's his baby. So again, the first time I read the letter that Dewey wrote that we're about to dive into, it said, I hate to leave May and the baby. And I'm like, well, who is May and who is the baby? And the only way I was able to figure out their names is by my Mimi's handwriting on the back of these pictures. And it says, Private Louis D. Bolynn, wife Annie Mae Spencer Bolynn, and then right here, daughter Kate. This is the first time I was able to find out his daughter's name by my Mimi's handwriting. And then she writes, last time that he saw his wife and baby. And Carolyn Summit again. There's my Mimi. When I'm scrolling through, I'm gonna make y'all dizzy, but it's just the way I gotta do it. I took everything I want to show you and compiled it into a PDF so I can just scroll up and down to save me some time for editing later. But anyway, there he is. I know y'all can't see this. This is obviously a World War II dress uniform. We used to call these Class A's when I was in the service. It's hard to see, but that is usually when you qualify with the rifle, you get a badge. Oh, I actually got mine right here hanging on the wall. No, I don't. I got it right behind me. Here's mine. It's missing. I don't know if you can see that there. There it is. So this is an expert marksman badge that you wear on your chest after you're qualified with your rifle. If you look close, that's what he is wearing. The PVT, that's his rank, private. Whenever you join, there's PVT, then there's PV2. So it's private, entry level, private. We call it mosquito wings because the rank looks like an upside down V. That's like entry level private. And then you got PV2. Those are and then you got private first class, specialist, sergeant, blah, 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 blah. So this is just an entry-level rank. It's very common to join and just, you have that entry-level rank. But yeah, there's his rifle qualifier badge. That's all he has so far. He might have a ribbon on the other side, but you can't see it because the baby. So yeah, last photo, or last time apparently he saw his wife and baby before he left for war. And then we get into Dewey's letter. This is where it all started. So Thanksgiving, I talked about this in chapter 1. Thanksgiving of 2025, I went to see my mama, and she gave me this letter. Now, she didn't give me the envelope until a few weeks later. I went back over and she gave me this. We're going to dive into the letter, but this is the envelope that the letter came in. So he's writing to his sister, Bessie. So the Bolyns had 10 kids. The oldest was Bessie Bolynn Raspberry. That's my great grandmother, and I am proud of that. So he's writing his big sister. And you can see right here it says McCall, South Carolina. I cannot find a McCall, M-C-C-A-L-L. I can find a McCall, M-C-C-O-L-L. Bolyns, if you're watching, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this should be McCall. Anyway, it's hard to see, the letter's so old, but there's his name. He's writing on his return address. And then you can barely see the Bolynn last name. ASN, that is his military service number. And this is important because when I'm trying to track him down with his military service and this and that, it makes it a lot easier if I have his service number. It's hard to read right here, but it ends in 703. This is how I was able to tell the difference between Ellis, that we talked about in chapter 1, and Dewey. It's because of their service records. Or, excuse me, it's about their service numbers. They both have different numbers, and it was easier to track. This information here, this helped me out a lot later. I didn't really pay attention to it first. You can't read it very clearly from where you're from what you're looking at. But this is Alpha Company, Company A, of the 1st Platoon, 27th Infantry Regiment, 25th Infantry Division, 1st Platoon. And this is Camp Mueller, Georgia. Okay, that comes into play earlier because when we get to the end, when I start talking about the thing that made my heart drop to my stomach, you gotta know where he was. And if you know what platoon he was in, they have records of what that platoon was doing at the exact same time, at the same time that they were doing it. So that tells us where he was actually at while he was in the war. So this comes into play here just a bit. So, writing to Miss Bessie Raspberry. So let's just dive into the letter. So the first thing that you'll see up top is the date. And if you're seeing it there, something looks off, right? 1994. Did y'all know Dewey wrote this in 1994? He did it. That's an error, obviously. This is impossible. So when I first looked at this, it looks like he wrote February. Okay, back up. This is 1944. That's the date, 1944. Even though it says 94, that's an error. It's 1944. But it either says the 19th or the 29th. So he either wrote 29th, scratched it out, and wrote 19th, or he wrote 19th and scratched it out and wrote 94. Well, the first thing I was like, February 29th, there's not 29 days in February. If you look, 1944, there is 29 days in February because I believe it was a leap year. Correct me if I'm wrong. But then when I went back to Mom's and got the letter, check out the postmark date. February 21st. So it would be possible to write a letter on the 29th and then had the letter mailed on the 21st, right? So this has to be February 19th of 1994. Now that tells us something. That tells us the date that, well, it helps us kind of, okay, so based on the information that he's talking about letter, he's saying, I just finished basic training essentially, and I'm about to go overseas. This tells us the date that he basically, or kind of helps us gauge the date that he landed overseas. So, well, let's just dive into the letter. This is really hard to read, so bear with me. I've almost got it memorized. It says, hello, sis. Just a few lines to let you hear from me. Now, remember, I'm not making cracks at my uncle here, all right? But we got a 6th grade education, so there's a lot of things when we're talking about singular and plural. There's a lot of things that he spells incorrectly, like the difference between THERE and THEIR. And he also he writes exactly like he talks, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a second. So it says, hello, sis. Just a few lines, singular, to let you hear from me. This leave me well and feeling good. Hope you and all the rest are well. Bessie, so he's saying Bessie, like, you know, he's writing like he's talking, right? Bessie, I thought that I would drop you a few lines while I had a chance. Sorry to hear that you had been sick. Bessie, if mother is still down there, now there it is, THAIR. THAIR. So I thought when I first read this that maybe that was some kind of Gastonia dialect, some kind of Georgetown dialect. Hey, let's go over there, right? But I looked it up and it is not. It is simply just a spelling error. But if you know anybody from Gastonia, I'm from over there. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, but no, that's just simply a spelling error. But he's writing it exactly like he says it. So THAIR. Bessie, if mother is still down there, tell her hello for me. And if I get time, I will come down there it is again, to see her before I leave. I am going home for 5 days. Then I will leave for Fort Ord, California. This is important. If you look at Fort Ord, California, I don't think it's actually called Fort Ord, California. But I asked myself, what was he doing in Fort Ord, California? Fort Ord, California was a known World War II base that got you ready and shipped you overseas. They shipped you overseas. So that's important. Fort Ord, California. It says, I sure do hate to leave May and the baby. This is what I was talking about. The first time I read this, I had no clue who May was. But now we know because what Mimi had written on the back. On the back of her letter. I originally thought this letter was from Ellis, the first guy, and I was like, he never married, he didn't have any kids, who's May and the baby? And I was like, well, maybe he's saying he'll miss his sister-in-law. But anyway, and then the dots got connected when I lined up the service numbers, and like if you see up here, it says Fort Ord, California. Ellis never went to Fort Ord. He deployed from the East Coast. But anyway, I sure do hate to leave May and the baby, but this is the Army. Okay, so throughout this letter, this is he's not complaining at all, but this is the only time he ever comes close to complaining. So anyway, I hope that mother is at home, for it won't seem like home if she is not there. May said, okay, this is where it gets confusing. He's basically said, May said that she had been wanting mother flowers for her. He's basically saying, hey, May said that you were trying to get flowers for mom or something like that. I guess she was sick. It sure is bad for all the boys to have left her. And so he's talking about they got four boys. You got the 2 in the Navy and the 2 in the Army. All of them are leaving, and he's leaving his wife and baby. And he's just saying, man, this is awful. You know, all the guys are leaving the ladies, and all of them were housewives. None of them worked. They didn't work. Women really didn't get into the workforce, based on what I see, until after World War II. That's when they started entering the workforce heavy, because up until then they were just, it was just common for women to be housewives. So anyway, but she can stay with you and all the rest until one of the boys comes back. I hope I get to see her, for I have to leave. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see. Until one of the boys. I hope I get to see her before I have to leave, for it will be a long time before I get to see may, before I get to see, basically saying, before I get to see any of you again, for I am going overseas. So, he knows he's going. Don't tell mother. This is what trips me up. Mama calls me a crybaby. I'm getting watery-eyed over here. But this is what trips me up. He says, don't tell mother, for it will worry her to death. That is a very Gastonia thing to say. It will worry her to death. I got some family from up north, and I asked them, do you ever say that? No, not at all. So, it will worry her to death. And anyway, something may happen that I won't go. Bessie, if I don't get to see you before I go, I want you to send me blah, blah, blah's address. I don't know who this person is. It's like Lloyd something. It could be a family friend, one of his buddies. No clue who that is. I will write you when I get there and let you know my address. Don't answer this letter, for I will be gone when it get here. Tell mother I will write her and say if she stays with you. So I'll tell mom I'll write, but just let me know if she's staying with you. You write and let me, write and let me know how she is getting along. I sure would like to see you early and all of the kids. So when he's saying you and early is my great grandpa, Early Raspberry. Sure would like to see you and Early and all the kids. I never have seen that baby of yours. I guess it is talking by now. That's my uncle. That's my Uncle David. When this letter was written, my Mimi Carolyn was born. My Uncle Jack was born. And so she's referring to the new baby. That would be my Uncle David. Well, sis, it is getting late, so I will close for this time. Be sure and write when I send you my address. Now, this is kind of funny. Tell Early, my grandpa, so I feel like he might be talking a little junk right here to my grandpa Early. Tell Early he should have been with me last Saturday night. We hiked for 26 miles. I sure was tired when I got in. So he's basically, you imagine, a guy in the army, and he's talking to his brother-in-law, which is quite a bit older than him. He's like, hey, too early, I marched 26 miles. So this might have been a little jab at Early, or, I don't know what he was doing. But anyway, I thought it was kind of funny. I sure was tired when I got in. Well, sis, I will close for now. I will write, for I may write Bill. That's the youngest, I believe. Well, he is the youngest, but I would have to check if that's Bill Wilson, the Navy guy, and A.T. Is it A.T.? Yeah, A.T. That's the other Navy guy. So until I see you, this is Dewey saying, hope to be seeing you all soon. Your brother, as ever, Dewey. So that's his letter. That is his letter. Like I said, I've almost got it memorized. Before we dive into what led him in the Philippines and led up to his end, essentially, I just want to show you a few things. So I believe, so here's another picture of Dewey's wife, Annie Mae, and then there's the baby, Kay Bolynn. Kay Bolynn. This is another photo I found, and this is also Kay Bolynn, his daughter. Now, Dewey was, he had died while this picture was taken, because you can see how small the baby is. But anyway, he was already passed. And then here's another one I used AI to kind of clean this one up a little bit. Again, I don't like doing that. Sometimes it just makes them look creepy. Put smiles on it. I don't know if they were smiling, but anyway. And then here's one that I found in my mom's stuff that my Mimi had given my mom, or she got from my Mimi. Anyway, we don't know who this baby is, but we think this might be Kay. Possibly Dewey's daughter, Kay. No notes on the back of the photo. Bolynn family, if you're watching and you know who this is, please let me know. We think it's Kay, but we don't know. So if you know, please let us know. Now we're going to dive into the last part, Dewey's military service, and kind of answer some questions about what he was doing in the Philippines. Now, I've got a few maps here. I'm probably going to give you all headaches going up and down on this. But before we dive into this, I got to do a quick, brief history to kind of explain why he was even there. All right. So when I was in school, We learned about World War II. 95% of what we learned was about Germany, was about Holocaust, it was about the Nazis. About 5% of it was about Japan. We learned about Pearl Harbor, their attack on Pearl Harbor, which brought us into World War II, and that was about it, right? So I learned that he was buried in the Philippines. His plane crashed in the Philippines, and I started asking myself, what was he doing in the Philippines? I don't even know where the Philippines is, right? So I Googled it, looked it up on Google Maps, and I zoomed out. Well, guess what's right above the Philippines? You guessed it, Japan. So Dewey was in the Philippines fighting Japan. So let me show you this timeline that I created that hopefully will kind of help understand what help you understand what was going on. I'm a visual learner, so this is just something I had to put it together like this. So this is kind of a timeline, and if you look up here in the upper left, this is when Japan attacks Pearl Harbor, and that's what brought us into World War II. Is my understanding. We were trying to stay out of World War II. We were in Depression and this and that, and it's also my understanding that the war is actually what brought us out of the Depression. So Japan attacks Pearl Harbor. That was December 7th of 1941. The next day, December 8th of 1941, Japan invades the Philippines. And let's see, about 5 months later, Japan had completely taken over the Philippines and occupied it. So there was 3 bad guys. You got Germany, Italy, and Japan against us. We're just calling them the bad guys. I think they called them the axis of evil. So December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor attack. The next day, Japan invades the Philippines, and about 4 or 5 months later, they had completely occupied the Philippines. So that's what Dewey was over there. He was over there in the Philippines fighting, trying to liberate the Philippines. He was fighting the Japanese. So if you look here on the timeline at the very bottom, you'll see the star from the left to the right. That is the timeline for the occupation of the Philippines. Now, this is not to scale. It's not to scale. So right here, you see Japan controls Philippines, April 8, 1942. That's when their formal occupation starts. And this is when Dewey joins the Army, May of 1943. So about a year later. Now this is guesstimated based on his letter. So in his letter writes that he's about to go overseas. He just finished training. I looked it up. Training back then was about 10 months. So this timeline adds up around February 19th. So this tells me the date that that he actually joined the Army, if that makes sense. So basically 10 months before he writes this letter. Something I put on here, the flight that Dewey was on that crashed and he was killed, that was, so the first recorded kamikaze airplane flights of the Japanese, the first organized kamikaze flights, they actually flew out of the same landing strip that Dewey's plane left from. I just thought that was interesting. And then over here, I'll talk about this here in just a second. But on March 4th, 1945, there was a heavy battle. It was called the Final Push of Luzon, Philippines. I'm not going to try and pronounce these names of these Philippine countries and different islands and stuff like that. But fun fact, my mom used to tell me a Bible verse when I was struggling in school. Her dad told her, my Papa Jim told her same thing. It's Philippians 4:13. And when I was going to church, I went up to speak one time and I said Philippines 4:13. Congregation kind of laughed and they corrected me, but it's I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So anyway, but just know there was a heavy battle, and again I'll talk about this in a second why this is relevant. Check out the date of this heavy battle, March 4th of 1945. Dewey's plane crashed on March 10th, 1945. 6 days after this big battle here, Dewey's plane crashed. So after Dewey's plane crashed, where did it go? Yeah, about right here. July 4th, 1945. Let's see, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. So about 4 months after Dewey's plane crashed, the United States had taken back the Philippines. We had liberated the Philippines. So if he could have just hung in there maybe 4 more months, and then Here, Japan ends up surrendering on September 2nd, 1945, about 6 months later after Dewey died. So it's kind of sad. If he could have just hung in there 4 more months or 6 more months, he might have made it home. Now, the date that World War II ended is debatable, but this is when Japan officially surrendered. So to a lot of people, that marks the end of World War II. So let me just show you some stuff about his flight real quick. So this first slide, you can see the location of the Philippines in relation to Japan. So again, the day after Pearl Harbor, Japan went down and invaded the Philippines. And about 4 or 5 months later, they had completely occupied the Philippines. So with Dewey's plane, this is the crash location. This is the crash location. So this is, I mentioned this in chapter 1. I try to be understanding about what was going on in the time, but there is a lot of information that's missing. So you would think if this huge airplane crashes, there was 37 people on board, there were 7 crew members and 30 others or passengers. You would think if this plane crashes and they find these bodies and bury them, somebody would have took the time to mark that spot, right? Excuse me, but it's just difficult to find. Now, I've requested the deceased personnel file for Dewey. And I was waiting to do chapter 2 until I got that, but everybody keeps asking for chapter 2 to find out more info. So I want to go ahead and do it, but I'm hoping that that file will give me a little more information, because if you look at the records, it says the crash location is believed to be in the San Pablo Bay near Tanana, right there. So if you go up at a larger scale, that's right here. That's in this area here, the very bottom of the Philippines, right? That big battle I was just talking about, that's at the top of the Philippines. They had pushed Japan out, all the way up north to Luzon. That was the last battle. So anyway, this is one report says it's believed to be in the San Pablo Bay near Tanana. So this is where his plane was landing, and they were coming into land when it crashed, which is awful because he almost made it, right? And the last communication they had, the pilots had called in requesting landing instructions. They reported bad weather, and they requested 5 ambulances, specifically 5 ambulances. That was the last radio contact that they had with the plane. And then it was found to be missing. They did flights trying to find it for a while, and eventually they did find it. But it's hard to figure out exactly where the plane was found. There's nothing I can find in public records that it's marked. Other reports say that it was in the mountains of Leet, which this whole thing right here on the left is Leet. So it's either way, he was landing, and the plane either crashed in the San Pablo Bay or in the mountains right here. But either way, they were literally descending, getting ready to land. They almost made the flight. So on this page, you can see the last flight. So this is where he took off from, and this is where he was scheduled to land. This is about 351 straight miles. So if you were at a tape measure straight through, it'd be 350 miles. It's only about an hour and a half flight, and it shows where he was leaving from and where he was scheduled to land. Now, when I was in the Army and when I was in Afghanistan, we had 2 major Air Force bases there that were secure bases. One was Bagram and the other one was Kandahar. I spent the majority of my time in Kandahar. These military bases, when you're at war, these big airfields, those are usually one of the most secure areas you'll find. Most of the action is outside of those in what we call FOBs, forward operating bases. Okay, so if you've got this huge plane that's leaving from here, I would assume that this would most likely be a more or less a secure airfield. But anyway, there's this flight. But if you look here, let me back up a little bit. Yeah, okay. So let me get into this. I don't know if any of you are picking up on kind of some of the things that I've been saying, but let's just ask yourselves a few questions real quick. So Dewey died in an airplane crash, right? Okay, so I looked up the information on the flight, and it says that this was a medical evacuation flight. So my thought was, all right, well, maybe Dewey was what we call a combat medic, and he was on this flight. That was his job. Absolutely not. Dewey was a combat infantryman. So here's the question. What was Dewey doing on a medical evacuation flight? So I looked it up. Up north, right up here, I looked up his platoon, and this is where he was. That last battle that I had just mentioned, where this is a gruesome battle where hundreds of soldiers died and were injured, that is where his platoon was. He was in the last push to liberate the Philippines. Okay, now again, check out the date of that last battle, March 4th of 1945. His plane crashed on March 10th, 1945, 6 days later. So this is where the battle was, up here where this star is. And then right here, this second star, that is where his plane took off from. And of course, down here, this is where he was scheduled to land and crash. So are you listening? Are you picking up on what I'm stepping on here? Did I say it right? No, it didn't. Anyway, can't edit it. My thinking is, of the 37 people that were on this plane, 7 of them were medical crew and pilots. The other 30 were soldiers. What is a combat infantryman doing on a medical flight? Is it possible that Dewey was injured in this battle and he was coming home? Is that possible? Is it possible that he was shot and he was being evacuated? Is it possible that he was already dead when he got on this plane? If that's true, and I can prove that, there's something called a Purple Heart. In order to get a Purple Heart, you have to be injured by the enemy. You have to be shot directly by the enemy. You have to be injured by the enemy. If you look at Dewey's medals, he was never awarded a Purple Heart. So if it's true that he was truly injured by the enemy before he got on that plane or even killed, Dewey was never awarded his Purple Heart. The records show that he simply died on an airplane crash. So here's my thing. If I can prove that Dewey was shot by the enemy or hurt by the enemy or killed by the enemy before he got on that plane, it is possible to have Dewey, my uncle, awarded a Purple Heart in his death. You know, I talked about in part 1, this is just, it's just so meaningful to me. And I really hope that by doing this, we can honor their service and their ultimate sacrifice. But what I was getting at is that there's no reason for a combat infantryman to be on a medical evacuation flight. There's just no reason unless he was injured. I also found another report that showed that some soldiers on that flight were already deceased, so they were transporting dead bodies. There's so many different misinformation, but the biggest thing here is that I've requested his deceased military personnel file. It takes a while to get, but if I can somehow piece this together and show that he was injured before he got on that plane, we can have Dewey awarded his Purple Heart. His brother Ellis has got one. His brother Ellis has a Purple Heart. Dewey does not. These are my military medals. Now, I don't have a Purple Heart. I wasn't shot, but they mean a lot to me. And I looked it up, and it is possible to have a medal awarded to a soldier after they die. So can you imagine how wonderful that would be? We can get the Bolynn family together, we can have a ceremony, and we can have someone pin on or give that Purple Heart to the Bolynn family's next of kin. Wouldn't that just be wonderful? Okay, I want to stop there for chapter 2, but I want to end you with one more thing. So we know that Dewey had a wife. Her name was Annie Mae Bolynn. And we also know that he had a daughter. His daughter's name was Kay. I have had a very difficult time finding any information on Kay. It could be for some of the reasons we talked about in chapter 1. A lot of times they went by their middle name. Sometimes they had family nicknames written in formal government documents. Is Kay short for Catherine? Is it Kathy spelt with a C and they called her Kay? I don't know. But here's the thing. There's a rumor out there that I've heard after talking to some people on the Bolynn side and some of the Raspberries that it is possible that Kay is still with us. Dewey's daughter, Kay. Now, she would be in her 80s. But I don't know if this is true, if she understands what happened with her daddy. And there's nothing more that I would love in this world to be able to sit down with Kay and talk to her about her daddy and everything he did for our country, and just tell her how proud I am of his service and how proud I am to have that Bolynn blood in me. So Bolynn family, if you're watching and you know Kay's out there, I'll be as respectful as I can be. I don't want to poke the bear or push any buttons or this and that, but if there's any way possible to find Kay and I can maybe sit down with her and talk to her, I would absolutely love that. All right, I will end there. I wanted to throw this out there real quick for anybody that wants to help finding information on this flight. The flight name was an Army Air Force medical evacuation aircraft. C as in Charlie, 46 Delta 5, C as in Charlie, as in uniform. Commando, serial number 4477341. That was the flight. If you can find any information on this flight that we can prove that Ellis was injured before he got on it, let me know. I've got a full bird colonel that actually reached out and he asked for some information. He's trying to use his resources to see if we can help as well. So if we can find the info and prove that he was injured, let's get that boy what he deserves. Let's get my Uncle Dewey his Purple Heart. All right, so thanks again for watching. Look out for Chapter 3. I can't decide. I think Chapter 3 is going to be maybe visiting Charleston to go to that conference to meet with the caseworker that are trying to gather these DNA samples and bring the soldiers home. Maybe we'll visit Georgetown. Or we could just do a tour of Gastonia, Luray Mills, Firestone Mill. I'm not really sure. So anyway, if you want to help or if you have any information at all, again, please email me at richardsonunfiltered@gmail.com. Thanks again for all of your support. Thank you for honoring my uncles. And we will see you in Chapter 3 of Finding Ellis.